This fabulously beautiful technique is called Cellini Spiral. It's named, as far as I can tell, after Benvenuto Cellini, a 16th century Italian sculptor whose Wikipedia page reads rather like a violent Renaissance set action movie franchise, and who, as far as I can tell, has never been associated with spirals in any way, so I don't know what's going on there. Please tell me if you know. Anyway, the beadwork technique is just sumptuous because spirals and helices are cool anyway, and then you throw in shiny, sparkly beads and crystals, and it's just mesmerizing. So even if you aren't a bead enthusiast, this might be fun to unpick as a geometry problem. For the purpose of making this video, I learned to model Cellini Spiral in Blender, and let me tell you, the geometry is daunting in a really fun way. The stitch is based on Peyote stitch, if that means anything to you, and if not, here's an animation. Peyote stitch is a kind of brickwork stitch where each bead is nestled between the crenellated beads either side from the row below, which sit slightly lower than it. And then on the next pass, it is the bead either side, if you see what I mean. It can be done back and forth in a flat sheet or round and round in a tubular shape, which is called tubular peyote stitch. And yeah, it is named after peyote, the hallucinogenic cactus. It's to do with indigenous American religious rituals and the bead-decorated objects used in the ceremonies, or so Wikipedia tells me. Just so you know, peyote stitch can be odd count or even count, which mostly just affects the way that you progress from one row to the next. Cellini Spiral is worked in a tube, obviously, and is even count, which means that when you finish a row, you step up to the next row through the first bead of the row you just finished, and then do another round up to that point, step up, next row, etc. So that first bead in your sequence is always a little further round on each row. And the thing that makes even count tubular peyote stitch into a Cellini Spiral is that you use graduated bead sizes in each ring sequence, which sort of offsets the circle's center of gravity as the piece grows, and the comparative fatness of the big beads skews the shape into that characteristic helix or spiral shape. Graded fatness is the necessary factor, but you can go with all seed beads, or you can go nuts with crystals and drops and weird shaped beads. Hi. The sharper the transition in size within your ring, the more pronounced the spiral will be. The best bit is choosing a bunch of beads and seeing what they're going to do together. So that's the main workings of it. Here's the fine print. Getting started is a bit of a mofo. In theory, you just put 2 of each bead on the thread in size order, up and back down again. Close that into a circle and make sure you're coming out the second of 2 matching beads. I always make sure it's the biggest ones because it's easiest to see the end of round transitions there. And start adding the next row by picking up a bead that matches the one you just exited and going through the second to next bead, i.e. laying the new bead on top of the one you just skipped. So every time you add a new bead, it should match the one you just came out of. And when you get back to the beginning, you need to just step up through the first one and start the next row. As usual, a tidy animation makes it look easy because everything stays in place through the power of not being real. In real life, it will behave more like a tangled pile of beads and thread that wants you to be unhappy. I'm sorry. It does just go with the territory of bead weaving. Working around a pencil or a bit of dowel or whatever you can find that's the right sort of diameter will help. I'd recommend keeping the starting loop kind of loose, like only go around the initial circle less than twice and leave a long tail to be tightened up and woven in later, because a tight and flexible starting circle won't accommodate the incoming beads, and a long tail will lend itself to picking up and working the spiral in the other direction, which you're likely to want to do if you plan to close it into a loop or taper it to pointy ends or whatever. So you can start in the middle of the piece and work in both directions is the point. To close the piece into a loop, make it long enough to circle around and meet itself, which will take many hours, be warned, and make sure you finish both ends at the point just before stepping up, so there's exactly one of each bead sticking up. Line up the 2 ends so the spirals match, and use the thread ends to stitch them together like a zipper, and then weave in the ends. To taper an end, you can start leaving out the odd bead in the sequence by just omitting it, and then stitching the 2 it should have nestled between together. And then on the next round, treat that as a single down bead when you come to it. And continue according to the normal rules, but with 1 fewer bead in your sequence. Do this about once or twice per full spiral for a slow, gradual decrease, or more like every 1 or 2 rows for a more abrupt end. You can also swap out the big beads in the sequence for smaller versions of themselves to reduce the overall size. There's a certain amount of winging it involved, and as usual, I advocate just making shit up, and it'll be fine, and you'll learn a lot. You can switch the direction of the spiral as you're going along for a sort of chevron situation. There's a protocol for reversing direction, and it is this. Complete a round so that you are about to step up through the step-up bead, but instead of stepping up, step down, and then loop around and come back through the step-up bead in the other direction. From there, you can just add beads in the same way, so always a bead matching the one you just came out of, and just proceed in the new direction, stepping up as usual until you get bored and decide to turn back again. No matter how long you made your thread to begin with, and I tend to make it as long as I can bear to work with, you will almost certainly have to weave in and start a new length of thread. So that was all a bit complicated in the end, and this does take forever, like all beadwork. If the thought of spending hours picking up and weaving one bead at a time makes you want to die, then fair enough, don't bother. But if you at all like that repetitive Zen craft experience, then don't be put off by the difficulty. Just go right back to basics, learn peyote stitch and tubular peyote stitch with some giant pony beads so that you can see what you're doing, and then keep messing about till it all makes sense, which it will. You're smart. You can do this. Send pictures. Good luck.